Hello everybody, Realm Builder Guy here, and welcome back to the channel and another Victoria 3 Dev Diary. And today it's a big topic, namely colonization. Now obviously, colonies have been a part of the world landscape for a long time at that point. By the 19th century, we're already talking a few centuries of colonization in Africa, in Asia, South Pacific, and North and South America. But it took on a different and more important role to a degree in the 19th century on how nations define themselves, and of course this age of imperialism that grew beyond one or two nations and encompassed significantly more. So today we're going to look at colonization in Victoria 3. I'm very excited about this game. If you're excited about this game and about the content here on the channel, you know what to do. Please hit that like button and let me know your thoughts on Victoria 3 so far in the Dev Diaries that I've been able to cover and what colonization does. So, the pith helmet became popular among British forces following the Anglo-Sikh Wars, being widely adopted in tropical regions. The helmet has become synonymous with 19th and 20th century colonial conquests and expeditions. So here you can see the pith helmet. And I'm guessing that is now the symbol of colonization in Victoria 3. To establish colonies, you must have researched the colonization technology, a Tier 1 technology common to many recognized powers at game start. This unlocks colonization laws as well as the Colonial Affairs Institution, which affects how quickly your colonies will grow. In 1884, the Berlin Conference initiated the Scramble for Africa. Hungry for new resources and global dominance, the great powers divided the continent between themselves and began a relentless campaign of conquest and colonization, establishing colonial governments to oversee their new domains. Here, colonize Windward Coast. And you can see Kong, so Ashanti, so obviously this is in Western Africa. You can establish colonies in strategic regions where you have declared an interest. So very important, you must declare an interest. And within those strategic regions, you can colonize a state region in which at least one state is controlled by a decentralized nation. So very important. Once you've selected a location, one of the provinces in that state region will be the starting point for your colony. Having a colony in a state region does not give you a monopoly on it. Other colonial powers can create competing colonies, resulting in split states and messy borders that are sure to generate diplomatic tensions in the future. Ah, yes, colonial border gore at its best. Colonial states are a special kind of state that is created by establishing a colony in a decentralized nation or conquering territory from an unrecognized power. A colonial state that borders a non-colonial state belonging to the same country will lose its colonial status and become a regular, unincorporated state. Colonial states have a bonus to migration attraction and are affected by certain modifiers from colonial laws and the Colonial Affairs Institution. Since colonial states cannot be incorporated, your institutions do not apply there, and pops living in these states cannot be taxed and will have very little political power to contribute to interest groups. Now, why would you want a colony? Primarily, you'd want colonies to gain access to more natural resources that you may be lacking at home, especially goods required for more advanced manufacturing, production methods like rubber and dye. Once your colony expands enough that it's the largest state in its state region, it will become part of your national market. So again, you need to, it's not just about having little toeholds in certain areas, it's about actually expanding that to a larger colonial footprint. So, national market, giving you direct access to the goods it produces, assuming that you ensure market access. Many European powers have little opportunity for aggressive expansion in their homelands, as wars there would become very unpredictable and destructive. And of course, any territory you don't colonize yourself may fall into the hands of your rivals. A handy progress bar, let's see here, lets you know how soon your colony will expand, with a corresponding tooltip and nested tooltip breaking down in increasing detail exactly why it is growing or not growing at the current rate. So your 50 days, growing colony, British colony in British Gambia, progress towards gaining an additional province, 0%. The next growth of the colony is estimated to occur on the 20th of February, 1873. Progress increases each day by 2% due to colonial growth generated by Great Britain. Max power growth per day, 2%. Great Britain is generating 6.59% colonial growth from 16.5 million incorporated population. This is then split between one colony. The rate of colonial growth is determined by your incorporated population and modified by your colony growth generation speed, primarily affected by your investment in colonial affairs, as well as by local conditions in the state region. The more colonies you have growing at once, the less quickly each colony will develop, though you can selectively pause and resume colonial growth in a state. Once a colony grows, it will expand into neighboring provinces owned by a decentralized nation within its state region. I mean, that's one important thing. It's not like colonies historically were created in a vacuum of power and populace. Obviously, it was taking away from an existing populace that was there. And this is simulated within Victoria 3. It seems very nicely and realistically. Now, if you want to be a colonial power like Great Britain or France or Spain, for an example, then you invest in colonial affairs. If you think about it, the German states at this time in the mid-19th century, I mean, there was no Germany. And Prussia, which then essentially became Germany, didn't exert any interest in foreign colonies until later in the 19th century. So their focus was completely different. It was more regional and national in unifying the German states, so they would put in less in colonial affairs. Interesting would be if you would be playing as Prussia and forego the unification of Germany and instead say, hey, let's become a colonial power. You know, maybe take the North German Norddeutsche Bund and then become a more powerful Prussia in that, but let's forget a unified Germany. It could be an interesting playthrough there. I will make a note of that for myself. Early in the game, the colonization of most regions will be a very long and painful process due to the prevalence of malaria and other hostile conditions. The technology of the time did not allow the European colonial powers to penetrate far into Africa, but with the development of quinine and malaria prevention techniques, this would cease to be the obstacle it once was. In Victoria 3, you will need to develop your medical technology and invest in your institutions to overcome harsh penalties to colonial growth and in the most inhospitable regions. Makes perfect sense. Now, of course, you can't expect to claim and exploit vast swaths of land without some resistance from the people who actually live there. While a colony is growing, it has a chance to generate tension with neighboring decentralized nations. If tension rises too high, the decentralized nation will begin a native uprising, a kind of diplomatic play, against you to retake their homeland and expel the invaders. Tension will slowly decay, but on average, you can expect the factors advancing tension to eventually outweigh its decay rate. Though it is very likely that the native inhabitants will be technologically outmatched by a colonial power, there are some factors that give them a fighting chance. Firstly, the colonial power needs to manage the logistics of transporting an army to the region while the decentralized nation has the home advantage. Secondly, other nations with an interest in the region can join the diplomatic play on either side. If France, for instance, has their own designs for dominance over West Africa, they might decide to support Kabu in their struggle against British encroachment. I love that, by the way. Colonial laws are typically supported by the armed forces due to their jingoistic ideology, which causes them to advocate for an aggressive and expansionist foreign policy. The industrialists, ever seeking new sources of profit, especially favor colonial exploitation, while the rural folk fear for their livelihood if their agricultural jobs are replaced by cheap colonial labor. So interest groups also play an important role in how you define your colonial interests. One of the most important factors affecting tension decay is your colonial policy. Colonial powers can choose between colonial resettlement, which encourages migration to colonies, and colonial exploitation, which improves building throughput in colonial states at the expense of reduced tension decay and standard of living for pops in those states. Let's sum this up. Once you have the appropriate technology and laws, you can start a colony in a decentralized nation, and it will slowly expand over time. The rate of growth is determined largely by your level of investment in colonial affairs and the population of your incorporated states. As your colonies grow, they generate tension with nearby decentralized nations, which can eventually lead to a native uprising. Next week, I'll be handing over to Ophalof of Monthly Update Video fame, who will talk to you in more detail about the decentralized nations of Victoria III's world map. Obviously, this is clearly tied into colonization. I think on the face of it, this is a very nice and smooth mechanic for colonization. So establishing a colony in a specific area that you picked, and then it organically grows depending on your policy and laws and investments back home. I really like this. Let me know your opinion on this, and will you be pushing for a more colonial play when you get your hands on Victoria 3, or were you going to focus a little bit more nationally and regionally? I'm thinking national and regional focus of, say, like the United States at this point, or Prussia are two main examples, or the Italian states, or looking to expand beyond your borders as one of those. Total change in history. That would be very, very interesting. Let me know down in the comments. I've got a few ideas for some Let's Plays I'm going to be doing with Victoria 3 once the game comes out. I'm really excited about it. And if you are too, hit that like button. Until next time, I'm Realm Builder Guy, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.